Her name was Alina. When the email with the subject line, "Notice of Inheritance," landed in her inbox, she almost deleted it. A scam surely. She had no rich relatives, none living at least. But the document bore her full name, her mother's maiden name, and the precise date of her birth. Too specific to ignore. The lawyer's voice had been dry and clinical on the call. A property in the Carpathians. A family estate. Abandoned since 1983. He gave her an address she had never heard of and a name she had long since buried. Radvan House. "You are the last surviving heir," he said. "Your great-aunt Magda left no children." Alina had never heard of a great-aunt Magda. A week later she stood on the edge of a forest where the trees grew too close together, gnarled like arthritic fingers, reaching for something they could never grasp. The road ended abruptly in gravel and mud. Her rented car looked too modern, too alive in that place. The air smelled of iron and moss and something older. Radvan House stood waiting. It was not the crumbling ruin she had imagined. No, it stood tall and silent like something that had been sleeping with one eye open. The roof was intact, the windows dusty but unbroken. Ivy climbed its sides like veins, and the front door, wide, double and dark, looked like a mouth just shy of opening. She hesitated. A crow landed on a dead branch above her. Made no sound, just watched. The silence was wrong, thick, unwelcoming. Even the forest seemed to breathe differently here. She entered. Inside, dust layered everything like snowfall, but the house was preserved. Furniture remained under old sheets. A chandelier hung like a frozen scream above the entryway. Her footsteps echoed against the parquet floor as though the house had been waiting to hear them again. The air was cold, but not with temperature. Cold with memory. She found the letter in the drawing room. It lay on a marble mantelpiece, sealed with blood-colored wax, addressed in precise cursive, for Alina V. She opened it. "If you are reading this, it means the house has chosen you. I am sorry. This place was not built. It was grown. Layered in grief, shaped by silence and hollowed by something we never understood. We called it family. We called it home. But it is neither. It is a wound that never closes. There are rules. You must not sleep in the east wing. You must never look into the mirror in the third-floor corridor after midnight. And if you hear humming from beneath the floorboards, do not answer it. It is not calling your name, it is remembering it. Burn this letter. Then leave. If you stay past the third night, it will know you're here. Emmer." Lena read it twice. Her hands shook, not from fear but a strange familiarity, as though part of her had known these words before. She didn't burn the letter. That night she stayed in a small bedroom in the west wing. She lit candles and tried to ignore the way the shadows moved against the ceiling. There were no humming sounds. No mirrors in her room. But there was something wrong with the walls. At times they seemed to pulse like something was breathing behind them. At 2:12 a.m. the chandelier in the hallway swayed. There was no wind. On the second day she wandered through the house. Dust and cobwebs were everywhere, but some rooms felt touched. As though someone had been there recently. A music box sat open on a dresser in the sewing room, still turning slowly, though she never wound it. A child's drawing lay on the floor in the nursery, stick figures holding hands, except one drawn upside down, its mouth a scribbled circle. She found a photograph in the library. For people. A man with deep eyes, a woman in a long dress, a teenage girl with sharp cheekbones, and a small child standing apart from the rest. The back read, Radvan House, 1956. Alina stared at the child. Something in the eyes made her skin crawl. Not fear, recognition. On the third night she dreamt of fire. She stood in a long hallway with no end, walls covered in red velvet, everything shimmering with heat. Something was coming behind her, dragging chains, humming softly. She turned but woke before she saw it. When she opened her eyes, the room was full of smoke. She leapt out of bed, heart pounding. But there was no fire. Just the smell, ash, cinder, burnt flowers. It faded as she opened the door. The hallway was empty. The chandelier above her was still swaying. Alina didn't go back to sleep. By morning she knew two things. The house was not empty. And it did not want her to leave. The front door was locked. She hadn't locked it. None of the windows opened. The crow was still on the branch outside, but it was no longer watching. It was turned away as though it had seen too much already. That evening she went to the third-floor corridor. He had to see the mirror. The hallway stretched narrow, lined with paintings of people who all looked vaguely like her. Eyes too wide, mouths too still. The mirror was tall and old, its surface darkened around the edges, ornate frame shaped like curling thorns. It did not show her reflection. Instead, it showed the corridor behind her, and someone standing at the end of it. Alina turned. No one was there. When she looked back, the mirror was empty. He did not scream. Screaming would have made it real. Instead, she whispered, "Who are you?" From deep below, under the floorboards, came the sound. A low, distant humming. And this time it knew her name. The humming didn't stop. It rose and fell like breathing, low, deliberate, insistent. Not music. Not quite a voice. Something between. As if the house itself had lungs and memory, and now both had awoken. Alina stood frozen in the third-floor corridor, facing the mirror that should have reflected her and didn't. The frame felt warm to the touch, like skin not wood. The humming grew louder beneath her bare feet. She fled. Down the stairs, through hallways choked with shadows, past portraits that seemed to shift their gaze as she passed. The air grew thicker, heavier, laced with the faint scent of burned myrrh and wilted violets. It smelled like grief. In the kitchen, she found herself staring at the cellar door. It was bolted shut with 3 rusted locks. It hadn't been the day before. She leaned her ear to the wood. Silence. Then a soft tap tap tap, like fingertips against bone. She backed away. She tried her phone again, no signal. She had tried it every hour, always the same. Even the compass app spun uselessly, unable to decide where north was. She opened every drawer in the house looking for keys for answers. All she found were fragments. Letters half-burned, family ledgers written in a language she didn't know, children's drawings with too many eyes. In the master bedroom she found the diary. It lay beneath a false floorboard under the bed, wrapped in oilcloth and sealed with twine. The name etched inside was in faded ink. Magda Radvan. Her great-aunt. She sat on the bed and began to read. July 17, 1964. Eliza is growing quieter. She speaks now only to the mirror in the east corridor. I told her not to. We all know better. But children listen to what listens back. August 9, 1964. Mother is gone. Father says she left in the night, but her shoes were still in the hallway. The humming has returned. I heard it in the nursery in the fireplace. I do not sleep anymore. September 3, 1964. There are doors in this house that were never built. Eliza opened one. He came back changed. She does not blink. September 23, 1964. I am hiding the mirrors. All of them. October 11, 1964. I heard my name in the walls. But it wasn't a voice. It was memory. And it remembered everything. Sis. Alina stopped reading. She stared at the handwriting. It was tight, slanted, rushed, as if the author had written under duress or in haste. She turned the page and found something stuck between the sheets. A torn photograph. It was the same image she had seen in the library, the Radvan family portrait. But in this one the small child was missing. The girl in the center, Magda perhaps, had no eyes. They'd been scratched out. Alina felt a pressure in her chest. As if something behind her had leaned closer. She didn't turn around. That night she slept in the study on a leather couch beneath a dusty bookshelf. She barricaded the door with a desk chair, though she knew deep down it wouldn't matter. The house didn't need doors to enter. She woke at 3:03 a.m. to find the diary open in her hands. She hadn't opened it. The page now visible was blank, until ink began to appear letter by letter before her eyes. Under the floor it waits. It needs a name to hold. Alina snapped the book shut. In the stillness that followed she heard movement from beneath the floorboards. Shifting, dragging like cloth over stone. And then, humming. Low, ancient, like a lullaby sung for the dead. She didn't sleep the rest of the night. In the morning she tried to leave. She packed what little she had brought and marched to the front door. Still locked. The key was gone. She grabbed a fireplace poker and smashed the window beside the door, but the glass didn't break. It trembled, then shimmered, then became solid again. Not glass. Not anymore. The house had made up its mind. She sat on the steps, trembling, the poker still in her hand. She thought of her mother, who had died when Alina was 11. A quiet woman with heavy eyes who never spoke of the past. A woman who refused to let Alina near mirrors after dark. Who always hummed when anxious. That same low tune Alina now heard in her bones. The connection formed like frost. Her mother had come from this house. Maybe not born in it but shaped by it. And she had run. She remembered dimly a whispered name in a hospital hallway heard through the crack of a door. Radvan. On the fourth night the house changed. The walls pulsed. The paintings wept. The humming came from everywhere now, beneath the floor, within the walls, and behind the mirrors. It wasn't music. It was a voice trying to become one. She walked the halls like someone sleepwalking into memory. Rooms shifted behind her. Doors that once led to closets now opened onto staircases that descended too far. The air buzzed. Her skin itched. And then she saw the child. At the end of a hallway. Back turned. Head slightly tilted. Wearing a white dress stained with soot. Feet bare. Eliza. Alina whispered. The child turned. But her face was empty. Not faceless, just blank. As though something had scrubbed identity from her. The child raised one hand and pointed behind Alina. Alina turned. And found herself staring at the mirror again. This time it showed the child's face. It was hers. But twisted. Pale. Hollow-eyed. And the mouth was open, singing. The same humming. The same tune her mother used to hum in the dark. She ran. All the way to the cellar door. The locks were open. Inside, the steps descended into perfect dark. The air that drifted up was warm and wet and full of memory. She descended. Each step creaked, groaned. The humming grew louder, clearer. It was no longer beneath her. It was around her. The walls wept moisture. A single light bulb flickered overhead, casting shadows like twitching fingers. At the bottom she found it. A room made of root and stone. Tree roots curled through the ceiling like veins. A shallow pit in the center filled with ash. And carved into the floor around it. A name. Eliza Radvan. She stepped closer. Something moved in the ash. And from the pit came a whisper. I remember you. The whisper in the cellar wasn't like a voice through air. It was more like pressure. Like something exhaled straight into her bloodstream. I remember you. Alina backed away from the ash pit, heart pounding, hands trembling. The roots along the walls pulsed faintly as though listening. She should have fled. Climbed the steps. Shut the door. But something held her in place. Not fear. Recognition. She stepped closer. The ash stirred again, rising slightly as if some buried lung had drawn a slow breath. The carved name Eliza Radvan glowed faintly beneath the dirt, pulsing in time with the house itself. Alina whispered, "Who are you?" There was no answer. But the humming returned, this time from inside her skull. Soft, low, but no longer distant. It was within her. She turned sharply and saw the child again, standing at the edge of the cellar stairs. Still wearing the soot-streaked dress. Still watching with that blank, waiting face. Eliza. Alina tried. The child tilted her head. Her mouth opened, not in speech but in mimicry, shaping the syllables of Alina's name, but not voicing them. Then she turned and ascended the stairs, vanishing at the top. Alina followed. Back in the main hall, the house had changed again. It was changing with every passing hour, like something adapting to her. The chandelier was gone now. The staircase railing warped into a twisted spiral. Portraits had peeled off the walls and revealed words written underneath in charcoal. The house remembers what the family forgets. Every mirror was cracked but not broken. They shimmered faintly when she passed, and if she looked too long she caught glimpses of rooms she'd never entered. In one she saw herself as a child, standing barefoot in the snow. In another she stood beside the woman from the Radvan family portrait, Magda, her hand resting protectively on Alina's shoulder. But that had never happened. Not in this life. Had it? The diary grew heavier. She opened it again that night by candlelight, seated on the bedroom floor. And again, ink bled onto a once blank page. You must remember, or the house will choose for you. And beneath it, names are roots. Once spoken, they cannot be uprooted. Alina closed the book and stood. She approached the tall mirror in the hallway, despite everything Magda had written. Despite every instinct in her body. The reflection was waiting. This time it showed her face clearly, but younger. Maybe 9 years old. Wearing a red ribbon. Holding a stuffed rabbit. The girl in the mirror stared back with haunted eyes. Alina whispered, "Eliza?" The girl smiled faintly. And then behind her reflection a door opened. Not in the house but inside the mirror. Alina reached forward and touched the glass. It rippled and pulled her in. She didn't fall exactly. She descended, slowly as if gravity no longer functioned quite the same. The world around her blurred and softened like melted paint. And then she stood in a version of the Radvan house that wasn't ruined. It was alive. Fresh candles burned on the walls. The rugs were new. The wood gleamed. A clock ticked rhythmically somewhere above. But there was no sound of life. No voices. No presence. Only rooms perfectly kept and air that didn't move. And at the end of the hall, the nursery. Alina approached it slowly. Inside she found a child sitting on the floor. Her back was turned but Alina knew. Eliza. The child looked up. She had Alina's face but altered. Her eyes were darker, more sunken, and her mouth was stitched shut with thread. She did not blink. On the floor before her was a circle of old toys. Stuffed animals, wooden soldiers, a headless porcelain doll. And in the center, a mirror shard. Alina knelt beside her. "I don't understand," she whispered. The child pointed to the shard. Alina picked it up. And the moment her fingers touched it she remembered. A snowstorm. A dark room. A voice singing that same low, ancient humming lullaby. She was a child again, maybe 6, standing at the base of a staircase. Her mother stood above, holding a candle, whispering, "Never say your name out loud here, Eliza. The house is always listening." He had said it anyway. She'd looked into a mirror. She'd whispered her name. And something else had whispered it back. Then her mother had taken her away. Fled in the middle of the night. Burned the family letters. Changed Eliza's name to Alina. Hid her from the bloodline. But blood remembers. So does the house. She dropped the shard. The mirror world trembled. The lights flickered. The walls buckled. The child rose. From her stitched lips came a terrible sound, not screaming. Not humming. Something between. The floor split. The house inverted. And then Alina fell. She woke in her real bed, gasping. The morning light streamed through the window, but dimmer, paler. Filtered through something heavy. Her skin itched. Her ears rang. And in her hand she still held the shard. It was warm. And it pulsed. Radvan House was not just remembering. It was becoming. It had known her name. But now so did she. She was Eliza Radvan. That had always been true. The new name, Alina, was a borrowed mask. A life layered over the wound. And the house was no longer content to remember. It wanted her home. She stumbled into the hallway. The walls bled ink. Name given. Root awakened. At the foot of the stairs stood the child. No longer blank-faced. Now she wore Alina's full reflection, clothed in memory forged in ash. And behind her the house shifted like a living organ. Breathing. Waiting. Wanting. The house no longer pretended. The illusion of crumbling walls, broken windows, and dusty halls had vanished. In its place stood a manor restored by memory, rich with impossible geometry and living roots. The walls pulsed faintly. Chandeliers dripped wax that hissed when it touched the floor. Doors opened where there had been none. The smell of myrrh had grown stronger. Beneath it something raw and organic, soil, bone, birth. And the humming was a constant now. It had grown louder. Not a sound, an environment. A current in the air. A rhythm. A heartbeat. Not hers. The house's. She descended the grand staircase, each step melting behind her. No path back. At the bottom the child waited. She looked exactly like Alina had at age 6. Same eyes, same lopsided braid, same frayed red ribbon. But her expression was not that of a child. She smiled with knowledge far too ancient. "You remember," she said without speaking. The words arrived directly in Alina's thoughts. Not invasive, just inevitable. The house pulsed once. The windows flickered. A storm raged beyond the glass, though the wind never touched the manor. Thunder rolled, but it had no lightning. Just echoes. Just names. "I am not you," Alina whispered. The child tilted her head. "You are what was left when the rest of you was taken." Behind the child the hall split into 3 corridors. One lined with mirrors. One with doors made of flesh-colored wood. One lit by candles shaped like open mouths. The child pointed to the middle. You buried me, she said. Now I am your root. Alina passed through the corridor. Each step made the floor bend and sigh like lungs deflating. Her name throbbed in the walls. Spoken, whispered, mourned. Gaith, Gaith, Gaith. The doors breathed. At the end stood a great chamber shaped like an inverted bell. In the center, the ash pit again. Only now it glowed like an open wound. And around it shadow figures. Faceless, robed in black. Not solid. Not mist. Memories. Echoes. Things left behind. She knew them. Great Aunt Magda, silent and shaking, holding a diary she could no longer read. Her mother, aged and sad, her lips stitched shut with regret. A girl with no eyes who had once been her sister. And above them all, a mirror suspended in the air, slowly rotating, reflecting none of them. When Alina stepped forward, the mirror cracked. A voice rose, not from the house. From beneath it. Speak your name. She did not. The mirror cracked again. Speak your true name. The humming grew louder. The house vibrated. The roots along the ceiling twisted into runes. One by one, the shadow figures turned to face her. They extended hands, but not to welcome. To bind. And the ash in the pit began to swirl. A shape formed. Small. Tau-like. Another version of her, rising slowly, mouth sewn shut with red thread, eyes glowing with ancient memory. Alina stepped toward her. He understood now. The house didn't want her body. It didn't want her soul. It wanted her name. Her full self. To belong again. To make the memory whole. No, she whispered. The humming stopped. The figures froze. You belong to me, the voice said. You always did. Alina touched the diary. She hadn't realized it was still in her hand. It pulsed like a second heart. She opened it one final time. And inside, written in her own handwriting, fresh ink. What is named can be unnamed. What is remembered can be rewritten. She looked at the figure in the pit. At the child. At herself. And said, You are not Alina. You are not Eliza. You are memory. And I am not yours. The house screamed. Not a sound. A collapse. A rift in the air itself. The ash pit cracked. The mirror above shattered into 100 pieces that rained down but never struck the ground. The roots along the ceiling shriveled, blackened. The child in the ash dissolved. Face first, hands last, vanishing like dust in sunlight. The voice bellowed one final time. If you unname me, you unhome yourself. And Alina, not Eliza, stood tall and whispered. Good. The house began to die. Rooms folded. Mirrors bled. Hallways collapsed in on themselves like lungs punctured from within. She ran. Stairs crumbled behind her. The chandelier crashed in a rain of frozen wax. The front door, long locked, swung open. Beyond it, a single path. Earth. Wind. A way out. As she crossed the threshold, she looked back once. And in the highest window she saw her mother. Smiling finally. Just once. Then the house collapsed, folding into itself like a house of cards, crumbling into the roots beneath it. Then silence. Alina stood in the clearing where Radvan House had been. No ruins. No ash. No trace it had ever stood. Only soil. She turned the diary over in her hands. The cover now bore no name. Only an imprint, as if something had been erased, but not forgotten. She dropped it into the grass. And walked into the stormlight. A book. Weeks later she stood in a quiet gallery in the city. A forgotten wing of a museum filled with ancestral portraits. One of them, tall, shadowed and distant, caught her eye. The plaque beneath it read, Unnamed Child, the Lost Radvan Heir. Alina stared at it. The child in the painting wore her face. But the eyes were not hers anymore. She smiled, turned, and walked away.